And here we go. Okay, so good morning. Today, as y'all can see on the top of the page, we are talking about completing the square, okay? Now, this is the last way to solve quadratic equations that I'm going to show you, and this is actually the last video of the year, so it's kind of sad. But anyway, so we've gone over solving equations by factoring, right? Remember we factored, we had all these steps, we did all that stuff, right? We solved by factoring. We solved by graphing. That's where we know we had where we could go to this calculator. We typed in the equation and we found the solutions, right? And then we did the quadratic formula. Okay, we had a whole bunch of steps. We put it to this big thing. Okay, this last way we're doing is called completing the square. It is kind of tricky, but it only has 6 steps, and I don't think it should be that tough. It looks worse than it is. Okay, so let's get started. We're just going to start right with an example, okay? So I can just show you the steps. So the first example we're going to look at, so example 1. Example 1 is going to be x squared minus 6x plus 8, equals 0, okay? That's my first problem. And I want to solve it, right? I want to find the solutions. And I'm going to do that by completing the square, okay? So, first step, step 1. I'm going to write that over here. So, step 1. Okay, step 1 is I need to move the constant. So, I need to move the constant to the other side of the equal sign. So, to other side of equal sign. Okay, so if you remember what a constant is, that's the number by itself. So I want to move this number to this side. Okay, so if I want to move a positive 8, I need to take the opposite, right? So if I want to get rid of this plus 8, I have to subtract 8. Okay, and then what I do to one side of the equal sign, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to subtract 8 on this side. Okay. So we draw our line, that cancels, gives me a 0 pair, and I'm just going to rewrite everything else, okay? So watch how I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus 6x, and I'm going to give some space here, and I'm going to write equals negative 8 over there, okay? That's the first step. Step 1 is done, okay? That's all we have to do. Hopefully you're with me so far. So let's go to step 2. So step 2, let me switch colors. Step 2, so I'm gonna write that down here. So step 2, we're going to divide the b value by 2, okay? That's all step 2 is. We're gonna divide the b value by 2, okay? So looking at this equation, right? The b value is what's in the middle, is what's in front of the just plain old x, the one variable, okay? So I'm going to take this value, negative 6, okay? And I'm going to divide that by 2. So I'm going to do negative 6 divided by 2. If you know that's negative 3, good. If you don't, put it in your calculator, okay? So negative 6 divided by 2 gives me negative 3, okay? Step 2 is done. That is it. Okay, that's a whole step. Now, on to step 3. Okay, so step 3, this is the big one. So step 3, okay, we're going to square the new number we just got. We're going to square the new number and add to both sides. Okay, so we're going to square the new number that we just got and add it to both sides. So I'm going to take negative 3, right, put it in parentheses because it's negative, square it, negative 3 squared, that's negative 3 times negative 3, that gives me a positive 9. Okay, that gives me a positive 9. And now I'm going to add this to both sides of this equation up here. So I'm going to rewrite that. So I'm going to have x squared minus 6x. Now, onto the left side, so plus 9 equals negative 8 plus 9. okay? So I added the plus 9 to both sides, okay? Now we can combine some like terms here, right? We can combine the constants. So I get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals negative 8 plus 9, 1, okay? So that's step 3. Step 3 is done, okay? So let me switch, let me slide a different color. So let's go to step 4. We're almost done. So step 4, okay? Step 4 is going to be, we're going to rewrite as a perfect square. Okay, that's the whole point. That's what we're doing. We're making a perfect square. We're completing the perfect square. See, that's the name, okay? So, to rewrite a perfect square, that means this. I want to change this, and I want to write it as a perfect square, as factors of a perfect square, okay? So watch what I'm gonna do. So to make a perfect square, it's gonna look something like this. So I'm just gonna have x, and then it's gonna have a squared, okay? And there's only one number here. So you might be thinking, where do I get that number from? Well, we already have it. It's this number up here, okay? So you're gonna take this, bring it down, and put it inside the factor. So it's x minus 3 squared, okay? And it looks funky, but it's gonna work every time, I promise. So you take the number from up here, from the second step, bring it down inside with the sign and all, and that gives you the perfect square of this right here. It's really cool how it works, okay? And then on the right side, we still leave it as equals 1, okay? That's step 4. We're done. That's it, okay? Hope y'all are okay with that. Let me slide down. Almost done, almost done. So let's go to step 5, okay? So step 5 is we're gonna take the square root. So we're gonna take the square root of both sides. Okay, we're gonna take the square root of both sides of the equation. So if I look at this, so I'm gonna rewrite it. So let's say I have x minus 3 squared equals 1, right? So I'm gonna take the square root of both sides. So square root, okay? So when I square root something that's squared, they cancel each other out. So all I have is, on the left side, x minus 3, okay? And on the right side, the square root of 1, you could put that in your calculator, it's just 1, okay? It stays as 1. But it stays as plus or minus 1, okay? The square root of 1 is plus or minus 1. That's a really tricky thing, and there's like a lot of math explanation for it, but just remember, when you take the square, when you're at this step 5 and you take the square root of a number, it's plus or minus that number. There's 2 numbers, okay? And you'll see why we need that later, okay? So that's step 5. That's it. We're done, okay? Last and final step, okay? So step 6, okay? Okay, I still need to slide up. Oh, it's okay. Okay, so step 6, we solve for the x's, okay? We solve for the x's. We find the solutions. So watch how I'm going to do that, okay? So to solve for the x's, I want the x by itself, right? So I need to get rid of this minus 3. So to get rid of that, we add 3, right? We add 3 to both sides. But watch how I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to break this into 2 parts, right? Because this cancels, I get a 0 pair. So I have x equals 3 plus 1, right? That's one of the options. And then the second one, I have x equals 3 minus 1. So see how I got that plus or minus 1? 3 plus 1 and 3 minus 1. I got both, okay? So we just go one at a time. So 3 plus 1 gives me 4. 3 minus 1 gives me 2, okay? So my solutions are, I'm already at my answer. So my solutions are x equals 4 and x equals 2, okay? That's it. That's completing the square, okay? And we can check our answers too. So I got x equals 4, x equals 2, right? So let's go to our original equation. I had x squared minus 6x plus 8. So I'm going to go to my calculator, and I'm going to graph x squared minus 6x plus 8. Okay, so let me slide it over. So my solutions were x equals 4 and x equals 2, right? So let's check our answers. 2, 0, x equals 2, and 4, 0, x equals 4. We're right, okay? And I know you're probably thinking, like, if I can just do it in the calculator, why do I need to show all this work? Because eventually, like, when you get to algebra 2, you're going to have to be able to do this by hand, okay? Like, you're not always going to have just a calculator to graph it, or your phone to graph it, okay? So it's really important that you at least try to do this, because it's only 6 steps. It's only 6 steps, okay? So that's example 1, okay? Again, I'm going to post this. I'm going to go to example 2. So go page 2. So on example 2, we're going to do, that rhymed. Example 2. Let's do x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. Okay? So, let's follow the same steps that we did before. Okay? Step 1, move the constant to the other side of the equal sign. Okay? So here my constant is a positive 3. So I need to move that. So I'm going to subtract 3 from the left side. What I do to one side, I do to the other. I'm going to subtract 3 here. Okay? I get a 0 pair. So I'm going to rewrite everything on the left side. So I have x squared plus 4x, leave some space, equals negative 3. Okay? Step 1 is done. Okay? Now let's go back to the steps. Step 2, divide the b value by 2. Okay? So here the b value is a positive 4 now. So I'm going to take 4 divided by 2, and that gives me 2. Okay? And step 2 is done, just like that. Moving right along. Now, step 3. We need to square the new number and add to both sides. Okay? So, I'm going to take 2, right? I'm going to take the 2, and I'm going to square it. So, 2 squared gives me 4, right? 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? And I'm going to add that 4 to both sides of these two equations, on the two sides. So I have x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals negative 3 plus 4. See, that's where I put those plus 4s. Okay? And then we can combine the constants on this side. So we can rewrite it so it's simple. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals negative 3 plus 4, 1. Okay? So that is step 3. We are done with that step. Now let's go to step 4. We want to rewrite, there we go. We want to rewrite as a perfect square. Okay? So remember, this is how we do that. So it's going to be x with some number in between squared, right? And we get that number from step 2. We take this and we bring it all the way into here. So it's a positive 2, right? So it's x plus 2. That's a perfect square of this. Okay? I promise it is. It's going to work every time. Okay? And then we still bring down whatever's at the end. So equals 1. Right? And that's step 4. Step 4 is done. Let's slide down some more. Step 5. I want to take the square root of both sides. Okay? So let me rewrite it so we can take the square root. So I have x plus 2 squared equals 1. So let's take the square root of both sides. So square root of squared, that cancels to x plus 2. The square root of 1 goes to plus or minus 1. Okay? Plus or minus 1. Hopefully we're okay with that. And that is step 5. We are done with that step. Last step, step 6. We are going to solve for the x's. It's the last part. Okay? So, let's do that. So, I want the x by itself, right? So, I'm going to get rid of the 2 on this side. What I do to one side, I do to the other, right? So this turns into a 0 pair. And I can rewrite my two equations separately, right? So my two x's. So I have x equals -2 plus 1. And then I have x equals -2 minus 1, okay? And then we just solve, right? We just add them up. -2 plus 1 gives me -1. -2 minus 1 gives me -3, okay? And that's it. We just write them out. So my solutions are x equals -1 and x equals -3. And that's it. We are done. That's another example where we completed the square, okay? And again, we can check our answers, right? So we can go to our graphing calculator and we clear it. There we go. Okay, so let's write our original equation, right? X squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, so let me slide over. So my solutions should be x equals 1 and x equals 3. So if I look at my calculator, I click it, there's -1, there's -3. So my solutions are perfect, again, by completing the square, okay? And I know it seems like a lot when you look at it like this, but hopefully if you watch the video and go step by step, it doesn't seem too bad, okay? So this is the last method to solving equations, and you do need to know this for Algebra 2, and then when you go to higher math, like college math or whatever you might go to, okay? So you are going to have your assignment on this, and this is going to be your last math assignment for this year, so just be ready for it, okay? And if you have any questions about this, just let me know. If you want to see more examples, just ask, or there's a bunch online, okay? But I feel like I explained it better, so yeah, just let me know. Y'all have a good day. Oh, this is the last video. That's sad. Oh, well. Y'all have a good summer. Well, that doesn't make sense. Just have a good day. That's what I usually say.